all requirements of the State of Washington Opens Meeting Act. We have one announcement on February 10th, 2020 at 7 p.m. here in the council chambers. There will be a public hearing to consider the 2020 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan, Chapter 7 of the Bellingham Comprehensive Plan. If you're willing and able, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Lisa Anderson.
Here.
Michael Lillequist.
Here.
Pinky Vargas.
Here.
Dan Hamill.
Here.
Holly Huffman.
Here.
Hannah Stone.
Here.
Gene Knutson.
Here. Okay, we have two public hearings tonight before we go to our comment period. So the first public hearing is a public hearing to consider a draft ordinance establishing Bellingham Municipal Code 20.15a regulations for interim housing.
Good evening, council members. Rick Sepler, Director of Planning and Community Development. I'm joined by Lisa Poole, who will be doing the presentation tonight. As councilors will recall, we've been working diligently with the Planning Commission for over a year to develop those rules beyond the temporary shelters. These are the ones that are temporary, which would be extinguished or relocated. Tonight we come before you to describe those longer-term facilities to deal with the unsheltered, and I'll turn it over to Senior Planner Lisa Poole.
Good evening, Senior Planner Lisa Poole. And as Rick stated, these are regulations for interim housing. I'll just run through a brief presentation. So the process to develop these regulations is a Type 6 legislative process, and that means there's a public hearing before the Planning Commission and City Council. We started this process back in 2018, and some of the Planning Commission work sessions included both the temporary regulations, which were adopted in the fall of 2018, and the interim housing regulations. During this process, we also met in small group meetings with service providers, and we also coordinated with our legal staff and the Bellingham Police Department. Interim housing is a facility that includes overnight sleeping accommodations for people experiencing homelessness. They're located in a building or other permanent structure, and they're of a longer operational duration than the temporary shelters that we'll talk about next. They also include a sponsor and managing agency, and that is required to be a government agency, a nonprofit, or a religious organization. Some examples of interim housing would include transitional housing that's currently provided by Northwest Youth Services or Lydia Place. So this table describes the interim housing types, the zoning districts, and permit types. I won't go in great detail. There's much more detail in your packet. However, I show you this to emphasize that this is a tiered process whereby the smaller shelters that are located are smaller shelters that have less intensive uses would be located in more areas than the larger shelters with the more intense use. A Type 1 process is an administrative approval by the planning director. Type 2 is also approved by the planning director, and Type 3A is a conditional use permit that's approved by the hearing examiner with a public hearing. I'll just highlight a few of the key requirements. In residential zones, residents are required to have off-site referral by provider of housing services. An operations plan is required, and I'll just point out that it does include a code of conduct that would prohibit the on-site use or sale of alcohol or illegal drugs, and it also includes outreach with the surrounding property owners and residents. The permit may include waivers that are requested by the applicant that would be granted by the planning director or the hearing examiner. They also may include additional conditions if warranted. Some of the other requirements include on-site supervision, unless the applicant requests that this be waived, and it's shown that it can be waived through the operations plan. A 24-hour point of contact that's posted on the site. Coordination by the managing agency with the Homeless Service Center for additional services. Trash receptacles located throughout the site, and trash pickup around the site. Off-street parking would be determined on a case-by-case basis by the planning director or the hearing examiner, and no children, but there are exceptions to that, of course, if they're accompanied by an adult, or which is a parent or a guardian, or if the particular managing agency is licensed to host this population. So staff and the Planning Commission are recommending approval of this draft ordinance, and we're happy to take any questions after the comments.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions, Michael? Councilmember Lopez, excuse me.
Thank you, Gene. What happens right now with interim housing if someone wanted to set one up? Are there rules they currently go by, or what? Because you say that we already do have some of these facilities, so how are they currently permitted?
Well, as you look back on the history of their establishment, and we did, because the Planning Commission asked us to do so, we saw a range of different kinds of approvals based on the codes that were in place when they were established. And virtually all of them were not named out specifically in the zoning code, but were done on an interpretive basis to what they're most closely aligned with. So some were conditionally established, some were established by right in the districts they're in. There was no common thread, hence the need to sort of clarify for all a standardized process that could accommodate these facilities.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll open up the public hearing. Elizabeth, do you have any names signed up? And please make it to what's on the public hearing tonight for your comment, because we'll have a 15-minute comment period later.
I have one person signed up, Bridget Reeves.
Thank you so much. My name is Bridget Reeves, and I serve as the Associate Executive Director at the Lighthouse Mission Ministries. And I want to start off by saying that I have so appreciated all of the work that has gone into this. As Lisa mentioned, this was started back in 2018, so you can just probably tell just by the length of time that it's been since then, the amount of work that has probably gone in, but the number of meetings that so many city staff have put into this is incredible. And we're really grateful at the mission, and I know other homeless service providers are also probably very grateful as well. This is very, I feel, important to our community. Just last night alone, there were 144 people that slept in our drop-in center program. Just last night alone. That's 25 more people that were there last night than were there a year ago, the same night at the drop-in center. And so we need more of these facilities, and an ordinance along these lines that allows for the creation of this and the speediness of the creation and the permitting of these sorts of facilities is so needed in our community. A few things I just want to highlight about this ordinance in particular, and the reasons why I think that that it is ready for a timely vote of approval for our community are, one, I feel like it very much respects the rights and privacy of residents of the community that are living there, but then it also balances the needs and concerns that may be present in the neighboring community and the rest of the community of Bellingham. I also really appreciate the fact that there's not a per square mile limit on the number of people that can be located in a facility, that it's on a case-by-case basis, and what makes sense given the size, the location, the needs of the population, the building itself, and all of those design qualifications. And I apologize if I got those words wrong in there. I want to encourage a timely vote of approval for this. I think that this is so needed in our community, and I also just very much appreciate the work that has gone into this, that also then translated into the temporary shelter ordinance tonight. Some of that same work was transferred there, and some of those things are being encouraged to be adopted with that as well. And so I would just speak in approval and appreciation of that work as well. For those of you that are new up here, and for those of you that have been up here before, I just want to extend an invitation for a tour down at the Mission if you're interested to see more. I know Councilmember Lilliquist as well as Hamill have come down for a tour, and we've appreciated being able to share the services and things that are offered down at the Mission and be able to answer any questions that you have. And so I just want to extend the invitation to anyone else up here that would be interested. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, turn it back to council. Not all at once.
I want to move approval of this ordinance.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Hamill moves approval. Councilmember Vargas second. You want to say anything, Lisa?
No, I was just,
I support this. So what I wanted to make a comment is, for a lot of people who might not be diving into the details, because this was a very broad stroke presentation, I think the city has balanced really well some of the concerns of residents of single-family neighborhoods that may have temporary shelters located within there, also in the multifamily. So the considerations, like in a multifamily, that it would be in one section or like a floor, so that there, you can have some good case management. And having, when you see up to 12 people might be concerned about that. In a smaller house, there is a square footage requirement per person, which makes it a very healthy, livable environment. And also in the plan, there would be notification to immediate neighbors so that they're aware. When I was working on the Planning Commission, my concern would be is if I had a location right next to me and I saw different people coming and going all the time, I might be reporting that there's some, questionable activity happening, because I don't understand that it's, maybe a shelter for individuals, and this way I would have a good opportunity to be a good neighbor and welcoming. So I think the balance over the time, I think you've really come up with a really good plan. I'm kind of known as a person who really looks out for neighborhoods, and so for people who do know me, I'm behind this. I think the city really has addressed a lot of the concerns that may come up within this plan, so I just wanted to thank you for doing such a great job. I think it'll be good for the community, and I think a lot of the considerations that we would want in a plan, you were able to put those details in, so thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Michael, Mr. Lillquist.
I will also be supporting this. I want to thank the staff for the great amount of work that went into this, and also to former Planning Commissioner, now Council Member Anderson, for the time that you put into it as well. I think it shows in the work product. We need interim housing. We already allow interim housing, but as Mr. Sepler pointed out, we didn't do so in a way which was thoughtful and protective. I really appreciate the tiered approach in particular. If you take a large house and turn it into a professionally run interim housing facility for 8 people, that's real simple. That should go forward in a simple process. If you're putting in 20 beds in a campus of 2 or 3 buildings, you need a higher level of review. And this has the tiering. And if you're going to put in something substantially larger, it's the highest level review. I think that's appropriate. So I think it's well done, and I'll be happy to support it tonight.
Anybody else? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Is that timely enough, Bridget? Okay. Thank you for it. Okay, the next public hearing is to consider draft ordinance, Bellingham Municipal Code 20.15, regulations for temporary shelters.
Have anything?
I'll just preface again, the Planning Community Development Department brings forward the Planning Commission recommendation on this matter. As council is aware, an interim control is in place right now to allow for facilities such as these temporary shelters to be established in public zoning districts. That this ordinance would remedy that, and we took the opportunity to clear some inconsistencies, which Lisa will outline more fully.
Okay, as Rick stated, these are amendments to the temporary shelter regulations that were approved in October of 2018. They established the zoning, health, and safety standards for temporary shelters. And the temporary shelters are differentiated from interim housing in that they have a limited term time frame associated with them. And they include temporary tent encampments, temporary tiny house encampments, temporary building encampments, and temporary safe parking areas. And we do have 4 applications that were submitted and approved with these regulations. 2 tent encampments that are no longer in operation. They were operated by Homes Now. We have 1 tiny house encampment that is currently in operation in Fairhaven, and that is operated by Homes Now. And then 1 building encampment, which is the women's shelter currently in operation at Civic Field. And that is the permit that really prompted the amendments to the regulations, because it is located in a public zone, and our original regulations did not allow building encampments in public zones. So these are a very narrow set of recommendations that the Planning Commission recommended. I'll just go through them briefly. The first one is to allow the temporary building encampments in public zones with a Type 2 permit, which is that administrative permit approved by the planning director. They were originally allowed only in certain zones due to the 5-year time frame. They were currently prohibited from public zones due to concerns about programming and lack of suitable sites. But upon additional analysis, those issues have been resolved, and it allows the city and other entities that have this public zoning to be nimble in providing shelter. The second change is to require managing agencies of temporary shelters that are accessory to church buildings to comply with building and fire codes or to seek an exemption. These types of accessory shelters are currently exempt from our temporary shelter permit, and there's no change proposed to that. However, our legal staff does recommend compliance with building and fire codes for health and safety reasons, or the entities can seek an exemption from state building codes. The third change is to exempt adverse weather shelters of a very short duration from a temporary shelter permit. And the current process to do so is cumbersome, as it uses a section of our code that's really associated with natural disasters. So exempting these shelters from the temporary shelter permit really allows these facilities to be established in a timely and quick manner, not only this winter, but in future winters. And the fourth change is to provide the city with the ability to close a shelter if there are serious health or safety concerns until compliance is achieved. And this was recommended by our legal staff. Our interim housing ordinance also includes this section. So between the Planning Commission recommendation and the ordinance that you see tonight, we did make some changes, really just for consistency with the interim housing ordinance, and some examples of those include that we added a rationale, which is health and safety reasons for obtaining identification from guests. Only managing agencies with experience with sex offenders may request a waiver from that prohibition. And then managing agencies and the police department are required to establish appropriate procedures for access and coordination, because that is a really unique case-by-case situation. So with that, staff and the Planning Commission are recommending approval of the draft ordinance amending the temporary shelter regulations, and we're happy to take any questions.
Any questions, council? Okay, Elizabeth?
No one signed up.
Signed up. Is there anybody here that would like to speak on this issue? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and turn it back to council. Mr. Hamill.
Actually, I do have a question on Amendment 4, page 54 of the packet. Allow adverse weather shelters of very short duration to be established without a temporary shelter permit under BMC 20.15.100.8.3. That does not resolve the issue with emergency workers. Does a COAD or Community Organizations Active in Disasters, that's the acronym. There was an issue a year ago with certain volunteers that could not perform as volunteers because they were trained only as disaster-oriented volunteers, but this, I just want to confirm that this amendment does not resolve that issue. Is that correct?
I don't believe it does, no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Go ahead.
I'll move to approve.
Councilmember Vargas moves to approve. Councilmember Hamel seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We will now go to our 15-minute public comment period. Mrs. Oakes will read the first three names. Please line up on the wall over there, and I think we already know who's going first, but go ahead and read the names, Elizabeth.
Sure.
Back again, New Year.
Go ahead and read the other two names.
Thank you. Ken McCandless and Alex McLean will be after Dick Conaboy.
Yeah, my name is Dick Conaboy. I live on South 46th Street here in Bellingham. I'd like to congratulate the newest members of our city council. Looking forward to working with you over the year. And I'd like to congratulate the mayor, who was just last year with me on MNAC, the Mayor's Neighborhood Advisory Commission. And now he is mayor. Congratulations. And I'm still at this podium after 8 years on MNAC. I'd like to thank the council in the previous iteration in December for bringing forward, after Senator Hasegawa's briefing on public banking, but bringing forward a resolution to support him in Olympia in this effort. I think it's going to go a long way towards providing means by which we can finance public projects at much lower cost, and also keep monies that belong to the people, the residents of the state and of the cities and the counties, keep it in our own bank for our own purposes and not send it off to Wall Street. Thank you very much. I'd also like to talk briefly about the Mayor's Neighborhood Advisory Commission. I've already sent some information to our new mayor. Unfortunately, the MNAC meeting for January was canceled because of the snow, but 19 February we're going to meet again. And I know the mayor wants to talk about ways in which we can work together with the neighborhoods. And what I suggest is, and I would invite council members who are new to come to MNAC that night, to have a discussion about returning MNAC to its previous role in the official planning process of the city of Bellingham. I think that's extremely important to bring them back into the fold. I would also like to mention that the ordinance calls for MNAC to run itself, its internal operations, and that has been ignored over the years. And I would like to see that MNAC comes forward with a plan to operate on its own with staff support. So you all come out on the February 19th, and I'll have more to say about all this at that time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dick.
Thank you very much. It's kind of hard to be here. I'm not used to public speaking. I have a dream starting today. I can be judged not by my political affiliations, but by my contents of my character. On Martin Luther King Day at the Mount Baker Theater, I was called a racist and a bigot for considering voting for a man that physically looks like my own brother. That's just one opinion. Here's another man's. I believe that the left is fearful and hates Donald Trump because he doesn't act or speak like a racist. I think policies that he's accused of that are racist are cleaning up from racist policies left over from the previous administration. I can also bring up several things that Mr. Obama said that I consider bigoted and racist, but I don't think I'd do them because I consider them so horrible, and I don't think they'd meet within the guidelines of what I can say in this meeting.
You're on the line, sir, so be careful because you're getting in.
Exactly. Thank
you're getting
you.
into
And
politics.
please, I only have a few seconds. And race relations under Mr. Obama started good, as evidenced by the fact we voted for a man that was a black president. But near the end, every poll showed every demographic and economic group was saying race relations were the worst that they were under their own lifetimes. Mr. Trump did not invent the hard times we're going through. Race relations have been bad. He did not invent these hard times. They're not Trump's fault. I'm just asking, next year at the Martin Luther King thing, people were walking out because they couldn't explain to their little kids, why are these people saying bad things about you and mommy, you and daddy? It's hard to explain to a 2 or 3-year-old. Next year, at least at the Martin Luther King thing, one of my personal heroes, we're going to have either a new president or we're going to re-inaugurate the same one. Can everybody that comes there to honor Martin Luther King feel comfortable that they were welcome? And if not, I don't want to quote the new people, so I won't say it. But I mean, really, it's very intolerant here in Bellingham if you have the wrong ideas. We say we're an accepting community, but, you know, Greta's famous quote fits right here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Alex McLean, Happy Valley, former swampland known as Happy Valley. There were 500 people that showed up for the MLK event in Whatcom Park the other day. I talked to Vanessa Young at the Parks Department, and she said there were 500 people that showed up to plant trees and celebrate on Monday. And that's pretty impressive. There's a huge interest in the community, both through the Climate Action Task Force and because we are environmentally conscious here in Bellingham. And we're interested in stewardship, and we want to engage with this process and this crisis that's going on. And first of all, welcome to the new folks. It's so cool to see you guys after campaigning and thrashing through all that. It's nice to see the new council up here. But this is kind of my shtick. So for about the last decade, I find a little project about once a year, and then I bash my head against it for a while and move on to whatever the next thing is. And some of you remember I was fixated on Whatcom Creek last year, and especially the bus barn. It was very frustrating to me that it didn't seem like there was any avenue to get existing property owners on the creek to comply with the critical areas ordinance. The whole creek should have a 100-foot buffer, but as we know, if you're grandfathered in, if you have an existing structure, there's really no vehicle to encourage those property owners to move off of the creek. And one of my observations was the city, the port, various other local government agencies control a lot of property up and down the creek. So a possible avenue to getting private property owners to move out of that 100-foot buffer, because they will be there forever. They have no incentive to do anything except stay on the footprint that they currently have. And it's not an opinion that I harbor alone. There's other resources for sustainable communities that observe this as well. We need to go from a policy of no net loss of habitat towards looking for net gains of habitat. So this thing I threw out there, I'm not going to fixate on all year like I have with other stuff, but it's an opportunity. We have to find ways to get that creek restored and to plant more trees and do more cool stuff. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. Next three, Elizabeth.
Next three speakers are Joseph McDonald, Louis Walbreck, and Doug Gustafson.
Thanks, Eric.
My name is Joseph McDonald, and most of you know I have a speech impediment. My topic tonight is about the Super Bowl, specifically about players kneeling during the national anthem, and that many players claim Christianity, and how Christianity has affected this station over the centuries and up to this day. I believe that players are doing the right thing by kneeling. With the sad history of America being the greatest country ever stolen, with this attempt to annihilate one race and enslave another, it makes me feel the statement derived from our Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal a big lie. It was nothing back then to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ on Sunday morning and then go out and kill Native Americans later on that afternoon. Just as it is nothing today to preach hatred on the streets in the name of Jesus Christ. I implore the council and the public not to be fooled into thinking that society's racism is actually patriotism or godly behavior, because not everyone you meet waving a flag and carrying a Bible is a patriotic Christian. It has been my experience that a person on the street corner ranting and raving about the Bible is the biggest non-Christian person you'll ever meet. They are often very rude and abusive in their rhetoric, which contradicts the Christian lifestyle. The sad thing is, some people actually believe they are Christian. I think ranting and raving are key words that a person should focus on listening to this speech, because there are good Christians. It's just some people give Christianity a bad name. In a world where nothing left is right and nothing right is left, I leave my fellow Americans with this quote said by Sinclair Lewis, who was the first American to win the Nobel Peace Prize in literature back in 1930. He said, "When fascism comes to America, it will be wrapped in a flag and carrying a cross." Thank you, and God bless America while it's still here.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Louis Walbrook, and I'm here tonight from Lydia Place. First off, my colleagues and I would like to acknowledge all of the work that the council is doing.
Could you get a little closer to the mic so we can hear you? There you go.
Is this better?
That's better.
I can tilt it up, too.
Yeah, you can move it up. There you go.
First off, my colleagues and I would like to acknowledge all the work that the council is doing to address the current housing crisis, and thank you for continually listening to the needs of our community members. For the sake of furthering the much-needed conversation on the housing crisis, we would like to share some of the accounts of the individuals and families that have been served by Lydia Place. These accounts are unique, but they represent many of the trends, experiences of homelessness that often go unnoticed in our community. The first family that I'm going to talk about is a family of 4 with 2 parents and 2 young children. Although they were living in a motorhome, there was a roof leak and they were unable to afford that repair. This let in below freezing temperatures and created a damp environment. This motorhome also served as the main source of transportation for this household, and the high cost of maintenance meant that it often broke down and was not reliable. In addition, the appliances in the motorhome did not work, which meant that storing and heating up milk for the baby was a daily concern. The family worked very hard to meet their family's needs, and including enrolling their older child in school and maintaining appointments with their providers. To avoid tickets and fines, the family had to move their motorhome often, unfortunately resulting in their child having a difficult time getting to school consistently. Although they received gas vouchers, those were also very inconsistent. This next household is a single mother with a young child, a 5-year-old. While the family was able to find housing before the start of winter, these colder months were still not without their challenges. This family had no vehicle, and over the winter getting to and from places, including just to and from the bus stop, was very difficult. This child had ongoing health challenges, and accessing services to support their needs meant more trips on the bus and more time out in the cold weather. This mother was working, but school closures due to the weather and holidays meant that missed work days also were something that they had to deal with on a regular basis. Rent was always a priority, but that often meant sacrificing some of the other needs of that household. These are just some of the examples, but we do feel like they are representative of many of the experiences that our clients have. On behalf of the clients that we have the privilege of supporting, thank you for the work that you have done and continue to do to lessen the challenges for those experiencing homelessness and to create pathways to safe housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Doug Gustafson, chairman of Homes Now. Homes Now currently operates Unity Village, located at 210 Mackenzie in Fairhaven. Unity Village houses, right now we house 18 people. We have capacity for 20. We're going to fill the last 2 tiny homes soon. We are extremely thankful to the city for continuing to be a valuable partner with us in maintaining Unity Village. Our previous permit is set to expire April 30th, 2020. Originally, when we thought that this was our last site and then there'd be nowhere to move to, we got a petition together to extend our current permit. Now, the permit was pretty restrictive in the sense that it had like a hard cutoff date. So we kind of wanted the neighborhood and people in the local area to sign a petition to say that they wanted us to stay. Now, everywhere that Homes Now has stayed or been to, the neighborhood has said that they miss us and they want us to come back. We welcome that. Now that the city has agreed, and I thank Mayor Fleetwood for helping with that announcing that on the record that the city is helping us find another site to move Unity Village to. The petition is just to show that we got 316 signatures. The signatures kind of stopped as soon as like the city said that they would help us find another site, and the conditions of the petition have been fulfilled to extend Unity Village, not to extend the permit, but to extend the village, whether it's at the location we're at or at another location. And so I don't know where to turn this petition into tonight.
You give it to Elizabeth.
Oh, okay, I'll do that. But we're really glad that we can continue to be partners. We're really glad we can move forward into the future and that we can provide housing. We want to set up multiple sites as well. We have a private landowner who stepped up, but it's outside the city limits, and that site will not be ready by April. So we are eager to work with the city and set up more sites and get more people housed. Homes Now and Unity Village represents emergency housing. It provides actual stable housing for people while they get back on their feet and find permanent housing. It does not interfere with any housing programs that are currently being implemented because these structures are temporary. They can be moved around as the situation changes, whether we're at one site for 2 years or 6 months or whatever. It can be moved around. And we can set up in sites that are not suitable for standard development. So even though we're happy that the city has helped us with this next site that we're going to be going to, we would like to set up even more sites and house more people and get more people off the streets and improve the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just give them to her. She'll take it. He can take it.
Next three speakers are Michael Moynihan, Philip Breskin, and Scott Patton.
Go ahead, Michael.
Good evening. My name is Michael Moynihan Jr. I was a Homes Now bystander, an onlooker from the fence. Then I was a applicant and then a volunteer builder at the Fairhaven site. And now I'm currently a resident at the Fairhaven location. Go big or go tiny homes, I'd say. So the Unity Village, it's on a 1/4 acre. It has a very small carbon footprint. Specifically, our electrical consumption and water consumption is pretty small. We've gone through Homes Now has a little roller coaster history. We had to reorganize, we had to rebuild. We've gone through our bylaws and set up rules, and we've policed our own people, and that hasn't been fun or easy, but at least we're kind of coming out of the fog. So here we are, April's approaching. We are in dialogue about the extension and other possible sites. As a son of this great city, from my heart, I'd have to say that this project is great. It's a great project for the community. It involves the elements of social capital and collective efficacy, and I'd just like encourage people to get on board, become a community participant through this program. Go big or go tiny homes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi. My name's Flip Breskin. I live on Cherry Street in the Columbia neighborhood. It's nice to see familiar faces. I was invited as the storm was coming in, as the freeze was beginning, to join Heather Katahdin and Sherry, whose last name I've forgotten, to try to get out and find the homeless people who were not at the mission and let them know that the storm was coming and that there were alternative shelters. And I was shocked and I was brokenhearted because I talked with many people who had no idea the storm was coming, and they had no idea that there were shelters available. We're talking about people in shirt sleeves as the temperature is dropping to 20 degrees and the wind's kicking up. And it turns out that the mission is not able to serve everyone. They have needs that don't work. There are people who are not connected with other people. They're frightened enough that nobody had told them. They hadn't been talking with anybody, so they had no idea the storm was coming. And I spent the week out on the street with food, I hit up my neighbors, and they were wonderful, and showed up with gloves and hand warmers and hats and socks and coats and sleeping bags. But I kept hearing about the HOT team, that there is some formal city homeless outreach, but apparently not on the weekends, not on holidays, and quite possibly not at night. And who was doing the work was a bunch of old ladies. I'll be 70 next year, and I don't know how long I can keep doing this. So I'm here to ask for your help to do outreach that reaches everyone, if possible, and way more people than are reached right now. There were rules at the library such that they were not permitted to post which homeless shelters were open on each day, and it changed from day to day. There were, the folks we were talking to didn't have cell phones, didn't have newspapers, didn't have TV, and many of them didn't have communities, so they didn't have anybody telling them what was coming. And it's not who are we, it's who do we want to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Flip.
Hello, my name's Scott Pattern. I'm at 1021 24th Street in Happy Valley neighborhood. Sorry, that's hard to follow. What she said. At 24 years old, I went from being a healthy tax-paying member of society, and with one seizure, I was a disabled young man. I'm 31 now, and if it wasn't for the help of my family, my parents, my friends, some people at WorkSource, some people just willing to lend a hand, I would be one of those people in a tent. It shouldn't take that much to keep people from becoming homeless, and it's amazing when you talk to people how they got where they got. And it's amazing how often we prejudicially assume it's drugs or alcohol or a psychological disorder or something. It doesn't take that much to end up on the street. It really doesn't. What we do is pretty much the same as Flip. Quite often what we have is boogie bags, basic equipment for homeless people, whether it's a tent, a tarp. The tents are the best, but the timing of when we deliver them is crucial. And the reason why is because cold weather comes in, police will sweep a neighborhood. Quite often they'll tell people they have to leave at a certain time, regardless of what the weather change is going to be. We then offer to be able to get them the kind of materials they need, whether it's blankets, boots, a tent, and they have to say, wait. We know the cops are going to come back and slash up the tents while they're in the trash cans. Bring them at another time. They have to be able to time out when we can be able to deliver goods to these people because they're afraid of their own law enforcement in the community that they live in. And I just want it to be known that that's how they live, is with this fear. And it shouldn't have to be that way. Slashing up tents after cleaning up the tents, camping sites so that they can't take their shelter out of the trash can and use it again is not just wrong, it's inhuman. And it's not who we are. We can be better than this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and congratulations on your election.
Sandy Soderberg, Mary McIntosh, and Joanne Pattern.
There is a microphone right there. Go ahead. Press the button.
Is it on now?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Nice. My name is Sandy Soderberg, and I own some property in Bellingham off of Klein Road. And I've been in Whatcom County since 1980. My family arrived in America in 1732. To see this happening just breaks my heart, and I'm sorry if I'm getting emotional. This should not be happening. We should not have people on the streets. We should not have people not with a place to sleep. I have 1.94 acres, but it's not within your city limits, but it's in your UGA. And I know that that doesn't solve the problem right now to move Unity Village because they need an extension currently, and because the zoning does not approve of that. But I want to take this property and I want to allow a village to be built on my land so that we can help these people, help our neighbors. Whatever I can do to help that, I can't do a lot, but I can give this land to be used. And that's what I'd like to do. So with the help of the county and the help of the city, because it's currently zoned county, but it is in the UGA, I think that they can work together to be able to use this land to help transition people off the streets and give them a place where they can have some dignity and find integrity to transition themselves, have motivation to find the resources that they need to help themselves. And so if anybody has any questions when this is all finished, I'd be happy to talk with you about my land and about what would need to be done in order to use this for helping our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary McIntosh. I am fairly new to the county, and I actually live in the county, but I run a Facebook group called Bellingham Living, and I can tell you that as people are considering relocation here to Bellingham, to the area, homelessness is the biggest concern that they have, because they see the number of people that there are here that are unsheltered. And I heard about the person that died during the day and whose body was found at 4 p.m. during the day right on C Street. And I can't stop thinking about that. One of the things that I have noticed that is a huge concern is that the City of Bellingham's process is to check in at the lighthouse. I can tell you, I wouldn't check in at a religious organization. And I imagine that there are probably lots of people without homes who would feel untrusting and possibly concerned about going to a religious organization in order to check in. And I would really like to just ask why that is the policy, especially if they're to be sheltered at one place that's across town, but they have to check in at the Mission, and there is no transportation from one place to the next. It just doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't make any sense for a city policy to check in at a religious organization. And I would just like you to consider possibly changing that policy. I don't know if it's a written policy or if it's just the way you do things, but I have heard that a lot of people won't check in at the mission, and then they die during the day, and their bodies are found at 4 p.m. on C Street. And that's just not, it's not okay, I guess, for anybody to be put in that position. That's my opinion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joanne Pattern. I'm mostly here just to say, well, first of all, congratulations and welcome, very much welcome. I don't want to battle with a mayor anymore. I think that's going to be a huge thing for Homes Now. I volunteered with Homes Now for a couple of years now, and it's grown, it's gotten better, and hopefully we'll never have to camp in the front lawn out here again, ever. Please continue to support us, please. What are you?
Laughing at Marcus.
Yeah. Anyway, yes, please. It's getting bigger. It's getting better. It's grown huge, so much more organized. And I went to the Unity Village the other day, and I couldn't believe it. Compared to having tents in the front lawn out here, and how far and how it's grown. Yeah, thank you, and continue to support us, please, please. Thank you. We're all one paycheck away from being out there in the cold. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it? That's all that signed up. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? Come on down, Marcus. Anybody that wishes to, please come on down now and get in line so we can,
Hello. I'm Marcus D. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. I'm Marcus D. I am the Vice Chair of Homes Now, Program Director for Homes Now, and I also sit on the Whatcom County Homeless Strategies Work Group as the Homeless Advocate for Whatcom County, a council-appointed position. The time that I've spent with homelessness here in Bellingham has been whirlwind. I started out with the Homes Now advocacy, drawn along by the momentum that Joanne was just speaking of, and drawn along by, of course, the need we all see in the streets. I dissociated myself somewhat with Homes Now and became more independent along the time that Winter Haven was opened up for various reasons. My advocacy did not end, and my support for Homes Now did not end. I see it as a successful model. I continue to see it as a successful model. I continue to see it as the leading, cheapest, best, safest, best rehabilitative model in Bellingham today. I encourage city leaders, I encourage other nonprofits to please follow our lead and build tiny home villages immediately. I believe that when we leave a site, that site should be considered for another site immediately. We should have reflective populace within neighborhoods of our town that reflect the homelessness in our populace, and salt that throughout the city and absorb that ourselves. Our advocacy has helped to change the perspective on homelessness in Bellingham in a very big way, and I'm very proud to have been any part of it. It's not such a reach to say that previous incarnations of Bellingham government, the homelessness issue was more one of get out of the city, was some of the solutions that were brought and that were proffered. Since we've been here, and since we've been humanizing this, and since we've been doing the work that we've been doing, I'm so happy to see so many civic leaders stepping up and saying, these are our citizens. In fact, many of them have been their whole lives here. And many of them pay taxes. Many of them are veterans. They have paid plenty, and they're still relegated to living on the streets. We've heard people talk about religious institutions as a barrier. We hear the outreach. I was part of the outreach last year. I helped spearhead the outreach last year. Homes Now is supportive of the outreach team that goes out, as we heard Flip speaking of earlier tonight. It's tragic. You don't need to see but one person laying on the street. Help them into a Mylar sleeping bag and lay them back down on the pavement and say, good luck, we'll be back in a few hours, hopefully. We've got to do better. The work that I've done on the Homeless Strategies Work Group with Whatcom County and with other partners here in the city, it's not enough. I've said so within the work group, and I continue to say so. We need to do this all together. I appreciate the partnership that I feel with the city and with the county as we move forward, and look forward to working with you all as we solve homelessness in Bellingham. Thanks.
Thank you. Next.
Hello?
Yep.
Hey, my name is Ryder. I am a renter in the city. And I'm up here, I wasn't planning on speaking, but after hearing all these people speak, I'm just kind of frankly appalled at how much work that we have to do to fight with the city to get our neighbors off the streets and to take care of people that need to be taken care of in our city. These aren't like another group of people. This is our community. These are our neighbors. And you know, what we get is another Scotty Brown's in Barclay Village. We don't need that. We don't need any of the things that are coming up in Bellingham. We have plenty of space to house these people, and we're putting in useless things. We're letting it be taken up with dead blackberry bushes that don't do anything for our environment or for our community. And every meeting we have people up here, plenty of groups up here, giving you solutions and giving the city solutions, and we just resist them and we don't do anything. And now people are dying in residential neighborhoods where there are homes on both sides of the street, and that's appalling for a city that considers itself progressive. And I'm up here just imploring you as the new council that maybe you can fucking do something. Thank you.
Keep the language down, folks. That's not tolerated in the chambers.
This shouldn't be tolerated in our city.
Just that, you won't get away with that again. Go ahead, next.
My name is Jacob Peterson. I'm a environmental journalism student at Western Washington University. I'm here to speak in support of replacing the wastewater incineration plant with biodigesters at Post Point. The city where I'm from, which is Mount Vernon, has had biodigesters since the first wastewater treatment plant was put in 72 years ago. And I reached out to Gary Durancio, the wastewater operations manager, today, and I asked him a few questions about what they do with the resulting biosolids. And they actually sell them, contract with King County and sell them to Eastern Washington as fertilizers. And I asked him if there were any pollutants in there, like heavy metals or chemicals from households, things that get washed down the drains in households and industry. And it's tested once a month, and they don't find detectable levels of any pollutants in it. So it's safe to use in food production. And not only do biosolids lack pollutants, they reduce pollutions. King County, for instance, makes its methane from the it uses the methane from the anaerobic digesters and makes it into natural gas, which they can burn to make electricity. And even in Mount Vernon, they use the methane gas to power and heat their wastewater facility. Whereas right now, the biosolids are just getting burned in an incinerator in the city of Bellingham. And the methane is just emitted to contribute to climate change. And on that note, a lot of carbon dioxide can result from burning anything, including biosolids, whereas if it is sold as fertilizer and the carbon can be sequestered in the soil, which is one key solution to climate change, is using carbon sequestration through building up soils. So I would just like to highly commend the Climate Action Committee for the work it is doing on recommending to the city that the incinerator gets replaced with anaerobic digesters. And on another note, I would love to congratulate the City Council and the Mayor. I am happy to see you all. And I also highly support everything that has been said tonight about homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you. This will be our last speaker.
Hi, my name is Michael Studoff. I'm a city resident. I just recently had a friend who was homeless, and I think it's important to note how many people are put into the judicial system and how that system is designed to spit them out and not have really good support. And for a lot of those people, the mission is the only location. Being there to help my friend and has really given me an opportunity to see what it's like to be inside that and hear the story of what it's like in transition in a place in your life when you need to make important choices for parole or whatever, judicial reasons or whatever. And in an environment like that, it's really difficult. Not only are you dealing with screaming and someone kicking you right next to you on the floor in the middle of the night, hard to get good sleep, be in a good state where you can make good choices and healthy mind and body and whatnot. The drugs that are around there are very apparent. What is it, meth or coke? Who knows what's in those white bags with rocks and whatnot. Yeah, and alcohol. Who wouldn't want to take a couple drinks here and there to ease the pain of dealing and being in a situation where it's not very dignitable? And I can't imagine how many families who are put in homelessness, and I would not choose to go down there either with your youth or your spouse or whatever. But it's not on them, it's on the city to, and the fact that you guys are choosing them as our only sole provider. But times can change, and I'd love to see that you guys are willing and bending and making amendments to our policies of homelessness. And thank you for taking those steps. But yeah, we can't help but keep on repeating that we need to ease away from them as our only option. And to make healthy choices, you got to have options. So please do keep this progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody. We will now close the 15-minute public comment period and go to the mayor's report.
Brian, you want to join me up here? Several things. First off, hello. Pleasure to see you all. I just heard a bunch of mumbling. What's that? How's that? No appointments to announce, although there'll be, I anticipate, several announcements relating to appointments on boards and commissions in the coming meetings in February. As it relates to the Immigration Advisory Board, it's my intention to empanel that board in the month of February. I'm reviewing applications right now. Last weekend was the Bellingham Women's March on Saturday. Perhaps some of you were there. I had the honor of speaking at that and making some remarks. And again on Monday at the MLK event at the Mount Baker Theater. They were both inspiring events, and it was something that I enjoyed very much. I'd like to announce that Vanessa Blackburn, if she's still here, I hope I'm not embarrassing her by mentioning this, but Vanessa, would you mind coming up? Before the election, Vanessa made it known to both to April and myself that she intended to step down as the communications director at the, well, now. And I've had the pleasure for just this past month of overlapping with Vanessa for a few weeks. She's been a great help to me in this transition. As people may know, she was the executive assistant to Mayor Kelly Linville for a number of years, and then served as the communications director in Bellingham for the last several years at least. She's going to be missed by all, and I just wanted to commend you, Vanessa. Her last day is this Friday. And I don't know if there's anything that you want to say. You certainly don't need to, but you may.
This isn't fair. It's been a pleasure to work with all of you. Welcome new council members. I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to work with you yet. Welcome, Seth. It's been exciting to have you on board. You guys have a great team here. I mean, this staff, the folks that you have working here, these folks, all of those folks over there, it's a good group, it's a good team, and it's hard to leave such a great team. But I know you all are going to do great, and that I'm excited to see where Mayor Fleetwood goes with the next 4 years, and good luck, and thank you. I mean, kind of thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you, Vanessa. Sorry about that. Should I not have done it?
Thank you for everything, Vanessa.
Thank you, Vanessa. That was a dagger there. Sorry about that. Some council members asked or inquired about the legislature. This afternoon, Michael Lilliquist inquired about status of our interactions with the lobbyist, et cetera, and I indicated in the afternoon session that we'd give a brief report on things. Brian Heinrich is here to just give the brief report on status of several bills. Go ahead, Brian.
Brian Heinrich, Mayor's Office. Thank you. So before I get started, I did want to comment. I was talking to Rick earlier that even though this is a short session, 60 days, they'll be out in mid-March. I think March 12th is actually last day. Tremendous amount of activity just in this short session. It started on the 13th, so we're all of 2 weeks into it. There have been hundreds of bills filed. So the information I'm going to share with you certainly is not exhaustive of what is happening in Olympia, but what I did was I just took a quick look at our legislative agenda and pulled out a couple bills that are reflective of some of the goals, I think, from that agenda. And I know Councilmember Hamel and Councilmember Lilliquist will, I believe, maybe either right now or later tonight, we're going to talk about some legislation. So I might briefly mention one of those and then just move on. But anyway, one that was a bit of a late addition to our own legislative agenda, House Bill 2661, relates to expanding accessible and affordable child care. Given the work that staff has done and you have done with respect to the Kids World closure, that's one that certainly has some relevancy. Somewhat related to that is House Bill 2619, increasing early learning access through licensing, eligibility, and rate improvements. It's the rate improvement piece for those of you that have been really working on this issue. You understand that the state lags a bit in terms of its ability to reimburse child care providers. So those are two bills that were certainly among the many that we follow, support, monitor. Those are two that we're tracking closely. I know, Dan, you'll reference House Bill 1590, but I did want to mention that because that tracks on our legislative agenda as supporting essentially local financing options. And what that would do is allow a local sales and use tax for affordable housing to be imposed by councilmanic authority. And I believe that's the county that have that authority, and Dan, I know you'll talk about that later. I did just want to mention just a couple more quickly. There's been a number of bills and I hesitate to even guess on the number, but, and Rick may know, a number that deal with whether it's urban planning or density, expansion of the housing supply, affordable housing, things of that nature. So along with AWC, the Association of Washington Cities, we will certainly monitor those and weigh in as appropriate. Maybe a couple just to mention. House Bill 2342, that's a extension of the growth management timelines. House Bill 2343 expands and creates new incentives for urban density and housing supply. Many of these also have companion bills in the Senate or vice versa. So I know I've said it, but a tremendous amount of legislation coming forward just in this early session. I did want to close with just a comment on something that's important to us is in the Connecting Washington gas tax from 2015, the city received a fair amount of funding for some projects, two of which, one is the Orchard Street connector. That's a $10 million project. The northbound I-5 on-ramp, another $10 million project. With the passage of I-976, those two projects were placed on the hold list. So we are eagerly awaiting not only a Supreme Court decision, but also what will Department of Transportation, what will the legislature do with respect to those projects? You know, even though that package was passed in 15, we were on track, I believe, this year to begin Orchard Street, next year to do northbound I-5 on-ramp. So major projects for us, very disappointing that they were thrown into limbo with the passage of 976. So we'll see what happens. Our lobbyists in Olympia, Tom McBride, Ben Buchholz, I think they have daily conversations with respect to transportation in addition to the bulk of other things that they do. So again, they're just a snapshot about some legislation that's of particular importance to us, but be happy to answer any questions or any comments you might have.
Any questions, or you want to wait till they're old or new when we get to what Dan and you want? Later? Okay, thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now go to our committee reports. First of all, I want to thank Council President Pro Tem Stone for sitting in for me this afternoon, and thank her very much for that. We will go to our first committee, which is Planning and Community Development, and it's chaired by Councilmember Huthman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I chaired my very first committee, the Planning and Community Development Committee, this morning. I was joined by Council Members Hamel and Lillquist. We had 4 items, and the first was a resolution regarding surplus property on Byron Avenue. On October 22nd, 2018, after a public hearing, Council voted to declare parcel number 380-332-210052, everybody got that? Surplus to the city's needs, but moved to postpone selecting a method of disposition to the Public Works and Natural Resources Committee for further discussion. Today's action ratifies Council's action on October 22nd, 2018 through the adoption of the attached resolution. As a request for proposal to affordable housing providers for this property had no respondents, staff recommends disposition by negotiated sale through the Public Works Department. The committee voted unanimously to approve, and I so move.
Second. Motion been made by Councilmember Huthman, second by Councilmember Hamel. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
And next we have a resolution regarding surplus property at 611 Texas Street. On October 22nd, 2018, Council voted to declare the property at 611 Texas Street as surplus to the city's needs, but moved to postpone selecting a method of disposition to the Public Works and Natural Resources Committee for further discussion. Today's action ratifies Council's action on October 22nd, 2018 through the adoption of the attached resolution. As a request for proposal to affordable housing providers for this property had one respondent, Colshan Community Land Trust. Staff recommends that this parcel is disposed of through negotiation by. If disposed of by special disposition, it's a lot of dispositions, staff recommends the city require a restrictive covenant to ensure the long-term benefit to low-income households. On this one as well, the committee voted unanimously to recommend, and I so approve.
Second. Motion been made by Councilmember Huthman, seconded by Councilmember Lillquist. Any discussion?
Okay.
Yes.
In addition, Colshan Community Land Trust is offering $0 for property valued at $160,000 in exchange for constructing a single-family home, which will be permanently affordable for purchase by low-income households.
Okay. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
All right, item number 3. The consideration of initiating a partnership to operate a safe parking pilot program. The city invests a significant amount of funding in housing solutions to address homelessness. Unfortunately, the funding and resources available to our community are inadequate to build and operate the entirety of permanent solutions needed in a timely manner. So we look to find ways to address the public health and safety concerns for those that are experiencing homelessness. Staff seeks council direction on whether it wants to, 1, attempt to find a partner to initiate a safe parking pilot program, and 2, fund, fully or in part, such a program. A budget amendment would be a future council action if staff is able to identify a suitable partner operator through a request for proposal process. And the committee was asked to provide direction, and the committee was supportive of staff continuing to seek a partner in a safe parking program.
There was no motion, so questions. Councilmember Vargas.
I do have a question. What are we offering to pay for?
Come on up, Rick.
Good evening. In this matter, we're going to submit a RFP for a response, and we're offering help reimburse partial costs for facilities, costs for land, if that's what's necessary in order to be able to enable it. We're reaching out to our faith-based and not-for-profit organizations. We know on a volunteer basis they don't have the capacity to mount this effort. Their hands are full with many other efforts. However, if we're able to reimburse costs or provide some recompos to them, they might consider hiring someone that could help coordinate that effort. So when you looked at the budget, you saw it was sort of a 0 to 200,000, and that's based on a partner coming forward who offers to do it gratis to serve the community, and the 200,000 is the Seattle model where it was fully staffed and operated by the city. And we're not sure till we have something that comes back, so we'll see what we get from the RFP, and we'll return for consideration of an amendment to fund it.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Mr. Rafato.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to staff to have a motion for the full council. It could just be supportive of the two elements identified in the agenda bill.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Councilmember Hamel, second by Councilmember Anderson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
All right, 4th item. This is a consideration of an ordinance amending the Fountain District Urban Village development regulations and permitted uses. The proposed ordinance would amend the development regulations with the FDUV to increase the allowable floor area ratio, also known as the FAR, in the commercial core area from 1.5 to 2.5, and in a portion of the commercial transition area from 0.6 to 1.5. It would increase the bicycle parking requirements to be consistent with other urban village regulations and amend the permitted uses in the commercial transition areas to allow schools, art schools, and institutions of higher education as a conditional use. The Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on September 19th, 2019, and thereafter issuing findings of fact, conclusions, and a recommendation to approve the proposed amendments. The committee voted unanimously to recommend, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made by Councilmember Huthman, second by Councilmember Vargas. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 7-0.
And that is end of committee.
Thank you very much. We now go to Public Works and Natural Resources, chaired by Councilmember Lilliquist.
Thank you, Gene. We had 5 items, kind of quite different in nature. The first one has to do with the elevator in the Bellingham Public Library. We have a bid to award the contract. Please bear with me. The passenger elevator at the Central Library is over 35 years old and has reached the end of its service life. It is experiencing frequent mechanical failures, resulting in costly repairs and limiting public access to all 3 levels of the library. The city received 3 bids that were public opened on December, and Tiger Construction of Everson, Washington, determined to be the lowest responsible bidder, and they submitted a bid of $323,833, which includes just applicable sales tax. The engineer's estimate was a little bit lower than that, around $190,000, but after review, the staff determined that this really was a reasonable price. They recommended that we award the bid, and so did the committee unanimously, and so I move that we award the bid for this elevator repair.
Second.
Motion been made by Councilmember Lillquist, kind of a tie, but tie goes to Councilmember Vargas. You know, Michael, when you said it is experiencing frequent mechanical failures resulting in costly repairs, I thought you were talking about me at my age, but I'm glad it's not me. So, anyway, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
You're still out to bid, Gene.
Yeah, I'm sure I am out there.
The next one is another potential award. This project includes construction of a new roadway from the existing endpoint of West Horton Road over to Aldrich Road, including public and private utilities, vehicle lanes, bike lanes, sidewalks, lighting, as well as sidewalks and roadway improvements on Aldrich, which connect up to Cordata Elementary School. The city received 6 bids, which were publicly opened again in December. Ram Construction, in this case, was the lowest responsible bidder. The lowest bid for them was $3,130,514 and change, including the sales tax. The engineer's estimate for this one was higher, so $3,915,168. So this came in under the expectation. The discussion this afternoon indicated how this is part of a series of road improvement projects over the last few years and going forward. If we complete this segment, the next segment outside of city limits could be completed in the next several years by the county, so it'd go over to Northwest. This afternoon, the committee recommended unanimously to award the bid, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made by Councilmember Lillquist, second by Councilmember Anderson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
The next one is entitled "A Request to Amend an Agreement for Utility Service Zone Extension."
You forgot item 3.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
I was turning my pages too fast. Oh, right, the mitigation bank.
Yeah, 26.
Okay, so the next one has to do with the mitigation bank, particular a resolution dealing with the management of mitigation bank properties. A mitigation bank is basically a bunch of property that whose wildlife functions and ecological functions can be enhanced, and you enhance those functions because you're doing development someplace else. Because you impact a wetland or a stream here, you improve something else here at a higher than 1-to-1 ratio. And so this mitigation bank is primarily for city projects. And so that when we do a city road, like we just mentioned, we would need to mitigate that. This is buying property and managing that property to do that environmental mitigation. So we are actively developing a mitigation bank to improve the success rate of mitigation projects and achieve regional restoration goals and address the mitigation needs for public and potentially private entities who can buy into the system, to reduce our costs associated with mitigation, to coordinate mitigation efforts and streamline the mitigation process. Public Works this afternoon presented a proposed resolution establishing protection and use policies for mitigation bank properties. To have this mitigation bank approved by is it federal regulators? By federal regulators, we need to approve what our management policies are, and they basically say that this will be managed for wildlife concerns. This is not parkland. This will not be developed for trails. It's not for human use. It's for habitat restoration values. This afternoon, the committee unanimously recommended approval of the resolution, and I so move.
Motion been made by Councilmember Lillquist. Is there a second by Councilmember Hamel? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Okay, now the agreement on utility zones. Although it has to do with utility zones, as was described this afternoon, it really has to do with road improvement standards. So let me read this. Back in 1996, the city entered into an agreement for extending utilities outside the city limits at the time. It's now been annexed to Calvary Temple to develop its property. The current property owner, however, is Kellogg Properties LLC and Spring Creek Bible Church, and they're requesting to amend the street standard required for the agreement for constructing East Kellogg Road. We're going to be having a public hearing on this February 10th. This was a briefing for the council to be aware of all the issues. Basically, there's a bunch of undeveloped property. When they develop it, they have to develop the road to full standards. If, however, if they do that according to current standards, they're actually going to have greater impact on wetlands and more ecological harm. We're being asked to have a hearing to consider waiving those standards to approve an equivalent, that is what staff would say consider to be an equivalent road standard, which does not impact the wetlands as much, but has the same public benefit, and it would still be built at the developer's cost. This was for information only, no action was taken. Is that the last item?
No, you got one
No,
more.
I got one more.
Whose
Okay.
committee is this anyway?
Okay.
Busy day.
That's right. Surface and Stormwater Comprehensive Plan update. Staff presented us with an update on the 2020 Surface and Stormwater Comprehensive Plan. There will be a new plan which will include a 6-year capital improvement program that supports the intent of the utility to maintain water infrastructure. And the purposes are to reduce discharge of pollutants, to protect and improve habitat and fish passages and water quality in streams and lakes of Bellingham Bay, and to reduce erosion and flooding. The Surface and Stormwater Comprehensive Plan will also include an evaluation of the city's current stormwater management program as it relates to the city's National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, NDPES Phase 2 Municipal Stormwater Permit. Basically, we need a permit to do what we're doing from higher authorities, and this rate study has to do with updating our management program to meet that requirement. In addition, this plan, as staff presented it, will include the 6-year capital improvement plan, which has spending to achieve these goals, and that spending will help drive a rate study. And so this is why, particularly important members of the public, you're charged a stormwater fee. This is how we determine how much money is necessary to charge and what we'd be spending the money on. That plan is going to be developed over this next year. It'll hopefully be finished by the end of the year. There'll be several check-in points throughout the year. This was simply for information discussion only. Last item of the committee.
Thank you very much, Michael. I mean, it doesn't matter which order you go in. You can go in any order you want. It don't matter. Okay, Finance and Economic Development was chaired by Councilmember Anderson in Pinky's absence.
Wonderful. We had one item before us today, and joining me was, excuse me, Council Member Huffman and Lilliquist. So before us today was in December 2017, the city entered a management agreement with Premier Golf Course LLC for the Lake Padden Golf Course. In 2018, golf course fees were frozen, followed by a fee reduction in 2019 to keep the course competitive with other courses in the region. Premier is requesting up to a 3% cumulative annual fee increase for the remaining years of their agreement. The changes are warranted based on increased course operation cost, improved course conditions, and pace of play. The new rate structure does not change the cost of annual passes, which remain comparable to the market. However, a 3% annual increase for the grandfathered annual passes is needed until they catch up to the regular annual rate. With the presentation that was presented by the city, part of the justification is basically course improvements and then also future improvements that need to be made. They are operating well, but they could do better. With the reduction in the fee last year, even though it's increasing, if we approve this overall compared to 2 years ago, the fee is not substantially higher. It's kind of returning from previous with some additional. They also presented showing that they're focusing on the value of the golf course, and when you take a look at comparatives north of Seattle, there's, especially in the more local area, there's quite a few golf courses that are more expensive or substantially more expensive in order to play. They're also expanding other opportunities at the golf course other than just golfing. They're hoping to do evening activities and then also other events like concerts and other types of play. There's a couple of alternative golf styles that they covered, one using kind of like a soccer ball. So it was a good presentation, and today the committee supported this, and so I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made by Councilmember Anderson, seconded by Councilmember Vargas. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We now go to the Climate Action Committee, which is chaired by Councilmember Stone.
Thank you, President Knudsen. So this afternoon, the Climate Action Committee had one item before us. That was the Post Point Resource Recovery Project update. And so the Post Point Resource Recovery Project will replace the biosolids incinerators with a Class A anaerobic digestion process, production of renewable natural gas, RNG, and an off-site soil blending process for beneficial use. In September 2019, staff provided a briefing on the project status prior to execution of the contract. Engineering design is now underway, leading to a project submittal and approval by the Department of Ecology towards the end of 2021. The project as currently scoped is consistent with and implements the 2018 Bellingham Climate Protection Action Plan. During the September 2019 briefing, Council requested an additional briefing on energy production associated with this project. And today we had a presentation from Public Works. I would encourage members of the community who are interested to watch those committee meetings during the day are available, and so you can go back and watch those. I was joined on the committee by Hamill and Huthman this afternoon, and just wanted to draw attention to, when we were talking about climate action, that the city's taking, Councilmember Hamill drew attention to the fact that, this current total project cost is around $200 million. And so just understanding that this is one of those really heavy lifts that the city is taking on with respect to climate action, but it's going to have a really large impact when we're talking about reducing our carbon footprint. So that will be moving forward, and I just wanted to let the community know as well that coming back on February 10th, what I was requesting is just sort of a baseline report from Public Works about all of the work that we're currently doing, because obviously based on the climate action plan, there are things that the city has been doing and continues to do even prior to the recommendations coming forward from the Climate Action Task Force. And so just wanting an update about where we're at, and then on February 24th, we'll be coming forward with the work plan and sort of those next steps forward. And that is end of committee.
Okay, thank you. We will now go to the committee of the whole, and I'll let Councilmember Stone report out on the first item on the agenda.
Okay. So this afternoon with Committee of the Whole, there was one item before us, and the Bellingham Police Department introduced their newest member, K9 Raven. And so the Bellingham Police Department staff introduced our newest member to the force, police dog Raven. Raven is a 1-year-old Labrador Retriever who is undergoing training to be our next explosives detection canine. Once trained, K9 Raven will work with Bellingham Police Officer Horton to handle explosive detection canine duties for our community and surrounding communities, as they're also part of the regional team with a response area that ranges from the Skagit River up to the Canadian border. We also take this opportunity to thank a not-for-profit organization, Canines in Kevlar, for their generous donation of Raven to the Bellingham Police Department. And so Raven was here this afternoon, along with a brief presentation from Lieutenant Dawn Ulmer, and as we mentioned, Canine Officer Ben Horton, who's the handler, and did a brief demonstration. Again, you could watch that video. Raven is cute and dressed out in his Revlar and did good work, kept us alerted to the mayor's under the mayor's desk, a fuse that had been hidden. So Raven did good work this afternoon, and that is the end of committee. Yeah. Well, not end of committee. You can take over
Elizabeth,
minutes.
we don't have any night minutes. I don't have a copy. Which one is it? The meeting of January 13th? Okay. We have one set of meetings for January 13th.
Move approval. Second.
Councilmember Littlequist moves approval, seconded by Councilmember Hamill. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Old and new business. Who's going first? Anybody? Go ahead.
Hopefully mine's quick and easy. Chairing the Parks and Recreation Committee, I have the pleasure to inform the public that we're starting the application, not the application process, we're beginning the search process for the new director of Parks and Recreation. So some dates to keep in mind. There's going to be an application committee that will be reviewing the applications the week of February 27th, and then the committee will get together in the later afternoon in order to hopefully select 8 to 10 semifinalists to participate on an online interview. I'll be the council person who will be working with that. And then hopefully we'll be conducting interviews on Thursday, March 26th, and council person Littlequist has agreed to be the council representative for that. Also, there will be a community event which will include community stakeholders by invitation. The full city council is invited in order to attend the meeting if they're available, but we would be attending as individuals and providing feedback as individuals. And so that'll be Thursday, March 26th. So if you want to put that on your calendar, there'll be more details later once that gets finalized. And I do have a correction. The panel interviews actually are Friday, March 27th, which Councilmember Lillquist has offered to participate in. So that's my announcement.
Who's next? Dan?
Sure, I'll go ahead. Last Tuesday, I was in Olympia. I was invited down by a representative. I was on a panel, affordable housing panel, invited by Representative Nicole Macri. She's a representative out of Seattle. Also, Michelle Thomas from the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance. I read the following statement. I'm going to read the statement now. It's very brief, and I'm going to ask for a motion when I'm done here. And this is pursuant to Mayor's office. Brian Heinrich went through some House bills here previously. The staggering complexity of our housing crisis requires diverse resources, partnerships, and a degree of nimbleness to respond adequately based on local conditions. House Bill 1590 provides a degree of flexibility so that jurisdictions can deploy new local option dollars in ways that leverage other public, private, and philanthropic funds and fills gaps that constrain housing production, behavioral health treatment, and jail diversion. In Bellingham and Whatcom County, the shortage of capital, operating, and behavioral health services funding is constraining the production of housing with integrated behavioral health services for people who are homeless. House Bill 1590 will help our community attract more nonprofit developers, leverage matching funding, and pay for supportive housing and behavioral health services that are currently so difficult to fund. Bellingham and Whatcom County have created and invested considerable local resources over the last 10 years, including Whatcom County's behavioral health sales tax. That's at 0.1% sales tax, and the City of Bellingham's own housing levy. This levy, known as the Bellingham Home Fund, generated $21 million in revenue that was leveraged at least seven times over through outside funds. At the end of the day, this effort brought in over $150 million in revenue. Our goal was to build and preserve 415 units of housing. We built and preserved over 700 units of housing and provided rent relief for thousands of impoverished families over the last 7 years. That's what the City of Bellingham did. Yet there are still over 700 people experiencing unsheltered homelessness in our community and thousands more that are housing fragile. Our first responders report to us that the overwhelming majority of the calls that they receive have a behavioral health component as the primary reason for the response. House Bill 1590 will provide the option to increase the impact of and the reach of existing resources, will attract new resources and partners, and make progress towards important goals: reducing homelessness, preventing incarceration, improving the health and well-being of many of our most vulnerable residents. House Bill 1590 provides a meaningful local option response to our community's behavioral health and housing crises. Enacted at the county level, it would provide immediate relief to those experiencing homelessness or housing instability in our rural areas that are currently not served by the Bellingham Home Fund. This is important. House Bill 1590 could provide equity for our rural neighbors. Rather than creating an island of haves and a sea of have-nots, it would help level the playing field for households in all of Washington's 39 counties. I was elected to provide leadership on some of our community's most pressing and complex problems. House Bill 1590 provides me and my elected colleagues the option to exercise that leadership to advance proven solutions. Now, therefore, I move that Council direct the mayor and staff to write a letter of support for House Bill 1590 directed to Representative Dolio and other sponsors of this House bill.
Motion been made by Councilmember Hamel, seconded by Councilmember Vargas. Any discussion? Very well said, Dan. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you, Dan, for paying attention to this issue and bringing forward a solution.
Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Mr. Lillquist.
Yeah, I have something similar. Again, it relates to ongoing legislation down in Olympia. In this case, it has to do with climate change, and it has to do with something that's called PACE, P-A-C-E. It is one of the actions recommended by our Climate Action Task Force. Basically, it's a way to help property owners pay for clean energy or renewable energy improvements to their own property. And it's a way of providing funding up front that they then have to pay back over time. The reason why I bring it up is because there is currently legislation right now in Olympia that's moving forward. I've been talking to members of this, representatives of the Association of Washington Cities, our own representatives from the 40th and the 42nd, who are supportive of it. I would like to make two requests, sort of a simpler request, which is basically, can we as a council and hopefully as a mayor sign in to support House Bill 2405 on the PACE legislation. And then in addition, I've been working with representatives down there, and the prime sponsor, Representative Davina Doer, has introduced an amendment sort of based on my request, which says that the list of approved projects can be modified by the local jurisdiction to make sure that it aligns with climate action goals. The way it was first written, there was a little bit of a loophole and because it was the state law defined it, it really wouldn't have allowed local governments choice in the matter, and the amendment creates a little bit more choice for local jurisdictions to make sure there's full alignment. So I would ask that the City Council, I would move the City Council support both the main PACE legislation and the amendment being brought forward, and I would ask the Mayor to join us.
Second.
Motion been made by Councilmember Lillquist, second by Councilmember Hamel. Any discussion?
What you're referring to is called preemption, and preemption, it binds our hands when it comes to local option authority. I totally disagree with preemption. I support your motion.
Thank you.
You okay, Mayor?
I am.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries
Thank you.
unanimously. Old or new business? Councilmember Vargas.
Just letting everyone know that tomorrow we're going to go to Olympia for the Association of Washington Cities, where we meet with all the other cities that are working in Washington. Myself and Mayor Fleetwood and Brian Heinrich will be. Oh, you're going? Okay. Okay.
Already,
you don't know
how lucky you are.
And we're just going to meet with other cities and see what we can do and learn from the others, and also talk to our legislators and advocate for the things that we need in our city, obviously affordable housing and dollars for climate action. So anyway, we'll be there for a couple days.
We'll be awaiting a detailed report when you get back. So, okay, anything else under old or new business? Seeing none, we'll now go to the executive session. We had one item and I guess an add-on for two items. First item was a quasi-judicial matter, RCW 42-30-1.402. Staff provided information on a litigation matter. For information and discussion, no action was taken. And the second one was litigation, Smith v. City of Bellingham and Brooks Laughlin. Staff provided information on litigation matter for information and discussion. No action was taken. Consent agenda.
Move approval.
Motion been made by Councilmember Hamel, second by Councilmember Lillquist. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. There are no final consideration of ordinances. The next meeting of the Bellingham City Council will be Monday, February 10th, 2020. Meeting adjourned.